Have you ever wondered why those pesky economists consider themselves scientists? Does it seem like all the economists we see in the media are just spreading their theories as tautologies? Have you ever been confused why they bring up statistics so much? Well, I'm the Economancer, the high priest of the Economicon, and it is my pleasure to share with you the sacred texts of the Economicon. Today starts our campaign into the most fundamental but misunderstood realm of the Economicon, the econometrics philosophy. Today will be a brief overview of econometrics, like where the name came from, the statistical schools of thought in econometrics, and the general branches of econometrics. This video will not attempt to delve deep into any of these topics, as I will hope to expand on these subjects in later videos. Also, this and later videos will tend to keep math to an absolute minimum. There are tons of great resources on YouTube for mathematical reasoning and the mathematical skills in econometrics. Most notably, Ben Lambert, probably one of the best econometric teachers in the YouTube sphere. Love the guy to death. However, the underlying philosophy of science in econometrics is rarely touched on in books or even less on YouTube. Thus, the Economicon has whispered into my dreams, vaulting me forward to bring my economancy to you. So first, let's start off. What is econometrics? Well, you can also call it modern quantitative economics. Essentially, it's the application of statistics and mathematical modeling in economics. The application of these statistics and mathematical modeling is used to test those tautological theories of economics that so many people bring about. So this is the empiricism that we add into economics. So the term econometrics, it first came from Polish economist Paul Chompa. I'm pretty sure I just butchered that man's name. And he coined the term in 1910. Further, the two men considered the founding fathers of econometrics, John Tinbergen and Ragnar Frisch, both used this neologism to describe the melding of statistics and economic theory. There are two primary statistical schools of thought in econometrics, Bayesian and frequentist, also known as the classical. So, Bayesian statistics or probability derives its name from Bayes' theorem. The central idea behind Bayes' theorem and Bayesian probabilities and their treatment of inferences is that you can update the probability hypothesis as more evidence or information becomes available. Bayesian statistics is typically associated with subjective probability. Then we have frequentist statistics. This gains its name from the relative frequency of an event's occurrence. So you can observe over a number of repetitions within an experiment, and you use that to measure the likelihood of that event. So that gives you the frequentist. Now, Bayesian or frequentist is not an exhaustive list of the statistical schools of thought in statistics, but when it comes to econometrics, they're really the only two schools of thought. I'm sure there are others like diffusal theory and stuff like that, but it's rarely ever used. So almost everything in econometrics proceeds with either the interpretation or inference methodologies of Bayesian or frequentist. So let's talk about the branches of econometrics. There's three. Now with this, each one like time series and panel, it can be disaggregated into something more. But for brevity, we're just going to stick with the most basic definitions of these, right? So a cross-section refers to a population study through data collected by observing some subjects or objects at a single period. Time series is the data of an entity that is observed at various points in times. And then you have panel data, which is the love child of cross-section unit of observation and a time series unit of observation. Each of these branches of econometrics studies microeconomics and macroeconomics. Now, you won't find in financial economics that I'm aware of a cross-sectional study for financial economics. That just doesn't seem like it would make sense, especially considering like finance can usually end up being like high frequency time series or high frequency panel, which we'll kind of get into eventually. So essentially for all three, you have panel and time series, but you can study cross-section, macroeconomics and microeconomics. But cross-section is a lot more common in micro because it also has behavioral and experimental economics that's gone in there. And you'll see a lot of cross-section stuff in that literature. So the reasoning behind this is we're setting up the next set of episodes for the philosophy of econometrics. So we're going to start off with what is the philosophy of econometrics concerned with and the philosophical presuppositions of econometrics. So at some point in time, we will discuss the statistical divide between the Bayesian and frequentists, and then we'll go into how those are applied in econometrics, right? Because the same fist fight that's happening for Bayesian and frequentists over in statistics or philosophy of science doesn't necessarily mean that it applies to econometrics very directly, because you could have economists and econometricians, they don't even care about those arguments, the underlying philosophy or why they're used. They could just find that, if I use a Bayesian regression or a Bayesian vector autoregression versus just a var x or whatever, that I will have better outcomes than what I'm getting with, or the differences between confidence bands and confidence intervals and all of this. So that might not apply directly to econometrics or an applied econometrician. However, before I go into that fight, we're going to move into causality and the underlying philosophy and criticisms of causality in econometric theory. Now, the reasoning behind moving into these first is because, one, it plays a lot into what we're doing in the inequality. So as we're building into the inequality, as we're leaving the classical works, we're leaving, a materialist Hegelian dialectic from Marx into, Dubois, and we're getting ready to start on Simone de Beauvoir. We're moving into more structuralist, and then we're getting into post-structuralist or postmodern theoretical considerations of power structures, language structures, and stuff like that. And this post-structural critiques of structuralism, as well as Enlightenment era stuff, that's going to be a lot of the philosophical criticisms of causality in econometric theory, and moving into why we need stuff like nonlinear causality versus what we're studying with something like just linear causality or reverse causality or bidirectional causality, and how all of this intersects with the philosophical underpinnings of the modern day. And so with that, I hope you like this video. I hope you think of it well, because like I said, this is a good jumping off point about covering what the econometric philosophy really goes into, because again, this is something that's lacking in almost everything. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to tell you to like, share, and subscribe, because I think that's silly. But I'm eventually going to be doing like a little experimental study using some behavioral econ and some nudges. Thank you, Richard Thaler, and figuring out the best way to get you people to press buttons so that I become more famous, because, obviously that's why I'm doing this. I want to be famous, right? Let's be honest. Who doesn't want to be famous? All jokes aside, seriously, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.